we need to revolutionize not the education, but the learning experience.
We all know AI is going to redefine the roles and the skills that are needed in the workplace. It already is. So do you ever wonder, what's the point of school anymore? If students don't need to memorize facts, what knowledge do they need? That's the question that my guest today grapples with as a researcher and an author on how our schools, our teachers, and our learning environments can better equip students for the jobs of tomorrow.
So in the age of AI, what's the role of the teacher to make sure that the students going through a period of reflection to develop this critical thinking while they're using those digital tools?
Welcome to Work Better, the Steelcase podcast where we think about work and ways to make it better. I'm your host, Chris Congdon, and my guest today is Mario Chiasson. And Mario is an internationally recognized researcher and thought leader in learning innovation, system transformation, and future-ready skills. He's an associate researcher at the Université de Moncton in New Brunswick, Canada. And with AI taking on so much of our knowledge work, Mario argues that critical thinking is even more important, and teaching those skills requires the right teacher training as well as the right physical environments to learn in. Let's jump into my conversation with Mario. Mario, welcome to Work Better.
Welcome as well. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, I think this conversation is going to be really interesting because so many of our listeners are thinking about learning and learning environments. And your research, it spans AI and learning environments and system leadership. And one of the things that you've said that I found really interesting is the idea that modern society is pressuring educational systems. Can you tell us what you mean by that? What are the things you're seeing and maybe worried about?
I spent most of my life in the education system, and I'm closely to 30 years into this. And along the way, as a journey, as to being part of the teachers or a school principal or a district staff, and working with the Department of Education, and we're realizing that as we move forward, it seems that the speed of our societies is evolving much faster than the pace of the education. And as a whole, it slowly increases the pressure on how the school system can able to adapt. And this whole inertia kind of started when the digital age occurred. I would say maybe around the 80s and the 90s, when the industry have transitioned to the digital and technology. Our societies have adopted much faster the digital technologies as an organization and how that they can operating and automating, kind of the business. And, the school system, as they evolve, we kind of lost the momentum of its evolution in a sense. So I would say that we're...
Talk more about that.
Yeah, exactly. So we're in the midst of adopting or transitioning to the fifth revolution of the industry. We all know that the first revolution of the industry was the steam industry, and the second part was the electrical, which kind of gave birth, of our science into the education system. And the third revolution was the automation. And along the way, the role of the schools within the community was capable of responding about how do we equip our students. We can talk about the 3 R's and the skills, necessary during that time. But when the digital industry kind of occurred, it seems to be that the education system as a whole kind of became stagnant. And a lot of questions have occurred in terms of, how are we embracing this digital industry way back then? How do we are redefining or transforming, the education system into a digital ecosystem, for lack of a better term? And how are we going to redesign, the learning and the teaching experience while adopting digital industry? Had a lot of confusions about how we're going to be able to do that. So that was the first stopping block. And we have continued to struggle to adopt the digital industry. Now, we're transitioning to the AI world. So we're moving from human who used to do the work to the digital industry who's automating the work. Now AI is going to creating autonomous workflow. So before the 80s, the role of the school was fundamentally increase the knowledge. But with the digital industry, because our society sped up so fast, it kind of gave it kind of a double homework. So assuring that we have the essential, but also assuring that we're developing the competencies at the speed of the new technologies evolve.
Some of my friends and colleagues who are educators and professors, like when we're talking after work hours and they're telling me some stories about their students, like I find it really worrisome. You know, I've heard stories about, you know, young people who are using AI like literally to prep for job interviews, but literally taking the script from AI, not doing it themselves. Or, of course, you know, applying AI into a particular homework assignment or a writing assignment and really kind of relying on AI to do critical thinking. And like, I want to hear more about that because I think there's a lot of educators and organizations who are worried about what are our kids, our young people learning as they're moving through the school system into the workplace?
Yeah, it is a profound question. And we're still struggling to answer those questions in a large, but in bits and pieces, is that it's clear that we have a mismatch. And I'll give you an example. Humanity took 50 years to adopt like the telephone, like the wooden telephone. That took like 50 years.
Right.
And after that, it took 7 years to adopt the digital industry. So organizations that were analog and now they embrace, digital technology. That kind of transition took like 7 years. When the social media came in around the 2000, 2004, 2007, in that area, depending, it took 3 years. So we went to 50 years. We went to 7 years to adopt the digital industry. It took 3 years to adopt social media. And now it looks like between 2 and 3 months, we're adopting AI. Right now, we're seeing students or teachers using AI assistant, okay, to amplify the current activities. So let's say for a teacher that would like to create a lesson plan, instead of starting with a curriculum, okay, and create a scenario, a learning scenario, now they're using AI agents, any platforms, to facilitate, to amplify that. That's a proper way to use. You call that digital citizenship. So that's a form that they can help, and it can maybe improve the quality of preparation so that the teacher can spend more time supporting the interaction with the student than spending more time preparing. Okay, that's kind of one way of doing it.
Okay.
But you get the other side of the coin. How can I use this ethically?
Right.
So we can have this relationship that the teacher prepares, a great lesson plan that provides deep learning and allow students to develop those computational thinking skills we're talking about. So it's up to the school system now to how do we create an environment that they can use those tools ethically so they can make sure that the students gain knowledge instead of to be dependent of it. So to be independent, it's an opportunity to use AI agent to amplify the intellectual capacities of that student instead of using the other way to say, okay, but how can I cheat? Okay.
Sure.
So that's one form of doing that. So if we're spending a lot of time of educating our students, say, look at it, you cannot use AI to do tests, or you cannot use the AIs to create or to design.
Yeah.
While the industry is doing so, because they need to evolve at the same speed of the evolution of the technologies. So they are adopting it, okay, and they're using in a different way to simplify their work. The challenge becomes, how do you align those skills? How do you align the working environment with the learning environment? So to say that the student learning experience from kindergarten to grade 12 is capable of transitioning to the real work. That's the challenge that we don't have the answer. It's not clear because we need to align the curriculum, which is the knowledge, the learning condition, which is the practice, how the student learn. So instead of listening, is that how is he acting? How is he authoring? how he can be actually contributing to his learning. So what's the role of the teacher instead of to be in front of the class? But does it need to be in front of the class? It's so complex as a solution, but part of our research, we understand that to bring some equity and understanding on how to respect that, there's a lot of professional development that needs to get done to make sure that we're not abusing the technologies, but we're respecting it and how that we can use it in a good manner that's contributed to the knowledge experience of the students. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was reading an article just the other day, and it was talking about how because AI is, it's totally ubiquitous, it's available to anybody, anywhere. And so the use of AI isn't necessarily a competitive advantage for organizations. It's table stakes. The competitive advantage comes from the human mind, the brain, people's ability to think and to solve problems. And so I'm curious again, from an educational perspective, how do we teach that? Like, how do we begin to emphasize that in our curriculum?
That's such a strong question as well.
Yeah.
I think it's the first time of humanity that we're living some kind of a Promethean moment, right?
Uh-huh.
And the word Promethean coming from Prometheus, the gods who give the fire to humanity.
Right?
It completely changed the world.
Yes.
I think that we're heading into that kind of same adventure. So when you do that, we need to revolutionize not the education, but the learning experience. So we need to redesign and redefine the role of learning as part of the learning institution. Because in order to close a gap, we need to understand how the world evolves. And if we don't know how the world evolves, how the education system can adapt. And that is a challenge because how do you align the curriculum? We're facing in a situation that our society is evolving so fast. So we need to move the mindset of, I'm going to school to just in case. So I'm going to learn the Pythagorean theorem, like just in case, to a learning experience that, just in time learning. So if I'm going to use to just in time learning, it completely redesign the role of the student and the teacher. So I used to go to school to listen and to learn just in case.
Yeah.
I'm going to the school just to create and to produce and acknowledge or utilize the curriculum so I can learn just in time to do the task.
Yeah.
So in the age of AI, what's the role of the teacher to make sure that the student is going through a period of reflection to develop this critical thinking while they're using those digital tools? Because right now, we're using AI as a digital tool, but AI is a digital species. Eventually, as its maturity, they're going to learn how to think. They're going to learn how to create. They're going to learn how to collaborate with us because what we are developing is a digital species.
Before we move on, I just want to say something back to you. I'm just going to use your analogy of Prometheus. I'm glad that in my education, I had to learn about mythology. I had to learn these stories. Now, maybe that was learning for, as you said, like the just in case kind of scenario. When am I ever going to use that in my career? Like, does my employer care whether I know anything about Prometheus or not? Probably not. But it feels like that analogy that you're using is speaking to the idea of how do we, as humans, understand our experience in the world. And some of those stories tell us a lot about what it means to be human. I mean, so just a simple question on that one, like, should we still be teaching, about ancient mythology in schools, or is that just, it's no longer relevant, it's passé?
It will be relevant just in time learning instead of just in case. Okay, it won't be relevant, but it might be relevant to just in time. So the context of the learning will be redesigned to have that information on the spot. That's the role of digital industry.
Okay.
But the AI will be converted as AI assistant. So now I'm going to have an AI assistant who is going to help me utilize the agent industry. And probably I'm going to have an interaction with my AI assistant because there's a lot of abstraction or It's complex. Okay. Let's imagine. So we're going in a class, okay, and there's 25 students and there's one teacher. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just like a normal classroom. But now in the AI world is that I'm going to a class and there's 25 students, but there's 25 AI assistant per student.
Okay.
You're looking at the teacher, now they're going to have an AI assistant as well. But now this AI assistant is going to be the teacher assistant, and this AI agent for the student is going to be the AI learner assistant.
Okay.
So we're going to be able to decentralize the teaching practice, and you're going to personalize the learning. When that's occurred, it completely redesigned the space. So how that space could look like to make sure that student is still connected to human.
I see. So you were starting to speak, Mario, about some spatial implications to all of this. Like, what does this mean to the places that we're creating for this transformation to happen? Can you talk a little bit about your vision for that?
Yeah, I'll speak in three matters. The first one is the mindset. So
Okay.
the first mindset is that the principal needs to say, okay, I'm not the principal of the school, I'm the principal of the community.
Okay.
So how am I going to be able to intervene with my environment? So when we're embracing that, we need to respect three principles. The first principle is the well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how that makes sure that the student, the teachers, the parent, the custodian, the resource teacher are well. They feel good. I feel like home when I'm school. The second principle is a sense of flexibility. And that flexibility could be about the schedule. It could be that the student can have some flexibility. Talk about flexibility about the utilizing of the space. Can I move the furniture?
Mm-hmm.
Can I utilizing the walls as a writing? Can I utilize every bit in space of the schools as a learning opportunity? Okay, so this whole notion of flexibility. And the third element is the sense of community. And that sense of community is that the student feel that I'm not going to a school, is that I'm going to my learning community. This is where I'm going to learn how to socialize. This is how I learn how to collaborate. This is how to learn I'm going to communicate. This is where I'm going to learn how to listen, how to think, instead of just listening to teachers about a specific curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of the foundation or the principles, right? Now, from a concrete point of view, is how do you use that? So we're talking about the characteristics of the space. So every space need to be multifunctional, meaning that it can be configured and reconfigured without 30 seconds or 1 minute, depending on the context. So therefore, the teachers do not own the space, the student is. Okay, so that's the first kind of phenomenon about the multifunctionalities. The second one is about engaging. And this whole engagement is that the student is a lot of collaboration, but it's also provide auto-regulation. So the third characteristic of the space is it has to be diversified. And the diversity is that you got a lot of tools that the student can have the choice of the tool, they can do their tasks, but also the methodology on how that the student would like to learn. So I'm a type of guy where I'm a student that, you know what? I prefer using pen and pencil and under a table. I feel good. I feel
Mm-hmm.
secure. I feel safe. Other students can use like, a digital pen and an iPad and they could be, working in the hallway. So I'm talking
Okay.
about the way that they would like to learn, but also the accessible resource that allow the students how they would like to learn. So that's the diversity. The fourth one, I think, is the most important one, is comfortable. So when a student go to learn and they're comfortable, they're capable of concentrate. If I'm not comfortable, I cannot concentrate.
Right.
So we're talking about the physical component, but also we're talking about the noise component. So those are the four characteristics when we talk about multifunctional, engaging, diversified, and comfortable. So from a design point of view, if we want to create a deep teaching and a deep learning, we need to work with them to design that with them so that they can own their space.
Yeah. So, Mario, I know you've done a variety of projects, and since our audience here is listening and not able to see, like, can you paint a picture for us of what this kind of classroom might look like?
I'll give you an example. There's one school in Miramichi, New Brunswick, and one of their staff came in and they were very emotional. And the story was that the parents of that particular staff, they were living in a senior home. And that senior home was going to close. So it created a context for a student to say, oh my God, we got to do something about it. What can we do? So now you have this network of students, which was started by students, get involved with other students. And now you have this motion say, wow, we have a community task to do, how we can do this. So they get on the phone. They learn how to communicate. Teachers will say that this is how you communicate. And they were trying to tally some kind of a context to say, our objective is to make sure that senior homes stay open. What do we need to do? So they did a lot of research.
Okay.
They communicate with our superintendent of the district, say, can we have 2 buses? Because we need to go to that senior home and we need to do some activities with them. They say, well, what kind of activities? Play cards, read stories, listening to them. Okay, so that was part A. Part 2 is problem solving. How we can sit down with the CEO to say, how can we help? And they ended up that the student did a presentation to the community council, and they work with business partners, and they make it work. And the senior homes stayed open.
That's so amazing to think about a bunch of middle school kids, engaging that deeply within their community to try and solve a problem. And they learned a lot of skills in the process. Just using a phone, getting on the phone and talking to people about problems that's a key skill.
Yeah. So how do you design a school that, is socially, emotionally integrated? How do you feel that well-being, the sense of belonging, the sense of contributing, the sense of usefulness, is that you redesign and you creating a context of those space that's allowing those type of engagement instead of sitting down and listening to teachers who's delivering curriculum, to situation-based that engage the whole community and participate.
Mario, I think before we wrap up today, we'd just really like to have your thoughts about, if you're looking ahead, say over the next 10 years, what are some of the things that you think we should be thinking about? If we were a bunch of 8th graders who are going to jump in and help solve a problem, what are the things that you think are the opportunities or, the things that you're most concerned about looking ahead?
Well, from a work perspective, from a business perspective, from an education perspective, and I feel something to be worried about. I think that the speed of adoption of this new technology is going to create a lot of stress to businesses and is going to stress the system leadership. And we need to move to an adaptive leadership kind of a mindset, okay, and try to have a better understanding how are we going to redefine the human role within this new organization, because we're moving from automation to autonomous.
Right.
From the workplace or that workspace, they will need to go through a new kind of mindset structure of working, which correlate very well with the schools as well. So how are we going to be able to redesign the learning and the teaching experience using that? It's a great opportunity. The fact that we're transitioning for doing that. What worries me is that the speed of adoption, it needs to be faster. And when it's faster, it creates more stress.
Absolutely.
How are we going to be able to adapt to that? But yeah, I think that we have an opportunity to be able to innovate and completely redesign the teaching and learning experience, because the role of the school system is not to produce a student, okay, but to prepare a student to contribute, to be healthy.
Sure. Mario, it's just been delightful and educational for me to be able to talk to you and hear more about what you're learning in this space. And, again, I would just echo, I think what we all know is that in this age of AI, humans are uniquely critical parts of this. We can't just say, well, okay, we're going to let AI take care of everything for us, and adopting our learning systems to be able to do that is going to be really important. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you being here, Mario.
Thank you so much as well for having me.
People who feel a sense of community at work are more likely to be highly engaged, more productive, and report greater well-being. Now, a new issue of Work Better magazine shares how to create communities at work so people can thrive. Find design, insights, and solutions for the ways people work today in the new issue of Work Better magazine. Get your free copy at steelcase.com/WB magazine.
The future of work and education, of course, is changing rapidly, and Mario reminds us that we need to keep people at the center. His challenge to all of us is to design places where learning, innovation, and well-being thrive side by side. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend or a colleague, and be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And we would love it if you would visit us at steelcase.com/research and sign up for the Work Better weekly newsletter for workplace research and design ideas delivered right to your inbox. Thanks again for being here, and we hope your day at work tomorrow is just a little bit better. Thank you to everyone who helps us work better, including our producers, Katie Pace, Rebecca Charbowski, Stav Kontas, Chiara Licari, and Brandon Lasik. We are thankful for the creative art direction by Aaron Ellison and Emily Cowdery, and for the editing and sound mixing by Soundpost Studios, and the technical support by Mark Caswell, Sean McManaman, and Jose Jimenez. Our digital publishing is by Aureli Ariano and Jordan Marks.